James Mercer Langston Hughes was born in Joplin, Missouri on February 1st, 1902.
He wrote a lot about being lonely when he was young, and I think that was a tremendous part of the product of moving around so much.
Life is Fine by Langston Hughes.
The speaker goes to the river and sits down on the bench to think. He can't concentrate himself, so he jumps into the water and sinks. He surfaces and screams and cries. If the water hadn't been so cold, he would have died. But he says, but it was cold in that water, it was cold. He takes the elevator to the 16th floor of a building, where he thinks about his baby and thought he would jump down. He screams and cries again, and if it hadn't been so high, he might have leaped off and died. But he says, but it was high up there, it was high. He comments that since he is still living, he might as well live on. He might have died for love, but he was born to live. He says to his baby that he would docked if he or she were to see him die. He concludes, life is fine, fine as wine, life is fine.
The speaker of the poem keeps speaking of killing himself, but doesn't go through with it. Why does the person in the poem rethink about killing himself? In this first stanza, the speaker claims that he went down to a river. The reason that he claims is because he wants to think. We think he might have gone to the river to soothe his mind, because being around nature can be a way to clear your mind. The reference to trying to think and not being able to may suggest that the speaker is suffering from depression. Depression sufferers often report feeling listless and having a racing mind that makes isolating thoughts difficult. This would certainly be consistent with the fact that he is contemplating taking his life, and this fits well with the theme of the poem. The first two lines of this stanza gives the impression that the speaker is in fact drowning. He paints a picture of him coming up for air due to the use of exclamation marks. As the poem continues, we see that these lines are paraphrased throughout the poem. Hollering gives a suggestion of a call for help, and the use of the word crying throughout could once again be a reference to the idea that the speaker is a depression sufferer. Again, his suicide attempt is interrupted by the cold. Clearly, the pain of a suicide attempt is too much to go through with it. We think this line repeats the coldness of the water temperature, as if the speaker is trying to justify not going ahead with their attempted suicide. The third stanza starts with the speaker taking the elevator up to a high floor with the meaning that he's going to jump off the 16th floor. This continues the theme of committing suicide. But what is really interesting about this stanza is the third line, I thought about my baby. We think that he used this term, baby, as a term of endearment for a partner or an ex-partner.
These lines almost mirror the first two lines of the second stanza, but have been altered slightly as now the speaker is standing atop of a building, rather than swimming in a river. On the face of it, the height prompts yet another coward moment, and the speaker refuses to jump. Again we see a one-line stanza repeating a pattern set with the first three stanzas, and once again the content of this line follows the pattern repeating what had been said in the third line of the previous stanza. In this stanza, it seems to confirm that the baby that was previously referenced was a love interest. The speaker says he could have died for love, but wants to live on. This phrase raises all sorts of questions. Why would they die for love? Maybe it's just because they feel that they can't continue living without the other person. This stanza seems to be addressed directly at his loved one, his baby. They are effectively saying that they have not been broken, that they will show their partner and the world that they are upset, but that they have not been destroyed. This line seems happy at first, but adding the comment about wine may just hint towards some sort of drinking problem. As he is trying to deal with the pain by drinking, he seems destructive.
So, why does the person in the poem rethink about killing himself? Hughes uses frequent repetition to emphasize his message in the poem. We believe that this poem is about himself and a heartbreak he had. Some academics and biographers believe that Hughes was homosexual and included homosexual codes in many of his poems. as did Walt Whitman, whom Hughes cited as an influence on his poetry. Because of that heartbreak, he wanted to kill himself. However, the conditions in which he tried to commit suicide were larger and more painful than his mental state. The baby in this poem was probably his lover. We think that due to being black and possibly gay in that time era, they could not be together, which resulted in heartbreak and depression.